the 6 Republican justices on the Supreme Court have effectively proclaimed that they and Trump are beyond the reach of the law, undermining the fundamental principle that no person is above the law upon which this nation was built. They've done it. The U.S. Supreme Court has delivered a significant triumph to former President Donald Trump in the so-called immunity case. As a result, it could take a year or more before there's even a possibility of him being tried for attempting to overturn the 2020 election and, consequently, the government of the United States. As anticipated, the 6 Republican justices on the court effectively tossed Trump's sedition case back to the lower court with stipulations, where numerous decisions each subject to further appeal will determine whether his actions were official or private personal. This reset allows Trump to prolong the process for another year or more. But that's not the worst of it. They have also paved the way for Trump or any future authoritarian president to become America's first king or Führer. Unless Congress swiftly overturns this outrageous 6-3 decision, which is unlikely with Republicans controlling the House, American democracy has been gravely injured, potentially fatally, and the presidency has been transformed into a dictatorship, should the officeholder choose to act that way. Without swift action from Congress to overturn this egregious 6-3 decision, a move unlikely with Republicans controlling the House, American democracy has suffered a potentially fatal blow. The presidency has now been reshaped into a potential dictatorship, depending on the officeholder's actions. And naturally, any minor restrictions within this ruling will be irrelevant if Trump is re-elected this fall. He would appoint a compliant attorney general who would promptly dismiss all attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Chief Justice John Roberts even declared in this contentious decision that Trump's actions urging an attack on the Capitol and failing to deploy the National Guard or ask his supporters to retreat are part of his official responsibilities. Discussing Trump's incitement of rioters to overturn the election, Chief Justice Roberts oddly asserts most of a president's public communications are likely to fall comfortably within the outer perimeter of his official responsibilities. Justice Sonia Sotomayor strongly disagrees. Her dissent captures the gravity of the situation perfectly. Today's decision to grant former presidents criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency. It makes a mockery of the principle, foundational to our Constitution and system of government, that no man is above the law. Relying on little more than its own misguided wisdom about the need for bold and unhesitating action by the president, the court gives former President Trump all the immunity he asked for and more. Because our Constitution does not shield a former president from answering for criminal and treasonous acts, I dissent. She further elaborates. The court now confronts a question it has never had to answer in the nation's history: whether a former president enjoys immunity from federal criminal prosecution. The majority thinks he should, and so it invents in a textual, a historical, an unjustifiable immunity that puts the president above the law. The majority makes 3 moves that, in effect, completely insulate presidents from criminal liability. The 6 Republicans on this court have essentially declared that they and Trump are so far above the law that the entire concept this nation was founded on, that no person is above the law, is null and void. All a future president must do if they want to commit a crime, as Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent demonstrates, is to claim that no matter what they did, it's merely an official act, including directing the Attorney General to commit crimes himself. This is the sort of decision you'd expect from a court in Putin's Russia, as Justice Sotomayor's dissent clearly outlines. The main takeaway of today's decision is that all of a president's official acts, defined without regard to motive or intent, are entitled to immunity that is at least presumptive and quite possibly absolute whenever the president wields the enormous power of his office, the majority says. The criminal law, at least presumptively, cannot touch him. This official act's immunity has no firm grounding in constitutional text, history, or precedent. Indeed, those standard grounds for constitutional decision-making all point in the opposite direction. No matter how you look at it, the majority's official act's immunity is utterly indefensible. She rightly points out that the Constitution's text contains no provision for immunity from criminal prosecution for former presidents. Justice Jackson, in her dissent, starkly emphasizes that this court, acting as if they were royalty, has essentially elevated the former president to the status of a king, devoid of accountability to the rule of law. She writes, "To fully appreciate the profound change the majority has wrought, one must first acknowledge what it means to have immunity from criminal prosecution. Put simply, immunity is exemption from the duties and liabilities imposed by law. In its purest form, the concept of immunity boils down to a maxim: the king can do no wrong, a notion that was firmly rejected at the birth of our republic. To say that someone is immune from criminal prosecution is to say that, like a king, He is not under the coercive power of the law, which will not suppose him capable of committing a folly, much less a crime. Thus, being immune is not like having a defense under the law. Rather, it means that the law does not apply to the immunized person in the first place. Conferring immunity therefore creates a privileged class free from liability for wrongs inflicted or injuries threatened. Unless Congress acts swiftly to overturn this outrageous 6-3 decision, and let's be honest, it's unlikely with Republicans controlling the House, democracy in America is gravely wounded, and the presidency could be transformed into an unchecked dictatorship. Right now we have a president in Joe Biden who upholds the law and respects American traditions. But if Trump or another fascist Republican takes the reins, this Supreme Court decision essentially gives them the power to do whatever they please. The imperial presidency is no longer just a fear, it's becoming a reality, thanks to these 6 Republican justices. We are in unprecedented territory. This court's ruling could cause irreparable damage to our republic. Justice Gorsuch's words echo ominously. This decision could shape our government for the ages. What do you think about the Supreme Court's decision? Do you think there's hope for fixing this damage? Leave a comment below with your thoughts and be sure to subscribe for more updates and in-depth analyses on the state of our democracy. We need to stay vigilant and hold our leaders accountable. Together, we can push for change and defend our democratic values.